Hey brothers and sisters, it's your boy BC. Welcome back to another Based LDS video and a hot and popular topic. The only video I made that reached over 1,000 people was on the Respect for Marriage Act, and let's go back to that, shall we? Apparently, somewhat quietly, the church, through President Oaks, on February 11th, so a week and a half ago, published a response to members as to why the church supported the Respect for Marriage Act. And it was Elder Oaks who presented the message and sought to clarify the church's position. And so but I still have questions and problems. And I don't know if you do too, and I don't know how you feel about this. But let's go to why Latter-day Saint leaders supported the Respect for Marriage Act. President Oaks clarifies the church's position, and he did this while speaking to stake and mission leaders in Illinois and Wisconsin. So leaders of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints supported the Respect for Marriage Act, signed into law December 13th, 2022, by President Joe Biden, because the legislation provided necessary protections for religious freedom, said President Dallin H. Oaks on Saturday, February 11th. I am not a lawyer. President Oaks once was and then became a judge. I respect that he knows a lot about the law. But I'm honestly left wanting for more. So let's continue on. Speaking to mission leaders and stake presidents and their wives from Illinois and Wisconsin, President Oaks, first counselor and first presidency, said some Latter-day Saints have expressed concerns that the new national law is in conflict with the church's teachings against same-sex marriage. We need to clarify the church's position on that new law, said President Oaks. So let's real quick go back to their original statement, 15th of November, after it was passed through Senate and the House, and it was waiting to go to the president's desk. Their statement: the doctrine of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints related to marriage between a man and a woman is well known and will remain unchanged. We are grateful for the continuing efforts of those who work to ensure the Respect for Marriage Act includes appropriate religious freedom protections while respecting the law and preserving the rights of our LGBTQ brothers and sisters. We believe this approach to be the way forward as we work together to preserve the principles and practices of religious freedom together with the rights of LGBTQ individuals. Much can be accomplished to heal relationships and foster greater understanding. Okay. First paragraph. Marriage is between a man and a woman. Well known, will remain unchanged. I believe that. I don't think there will be anything that will happen that will force the church to go man and man, woman and woman is also ordained of God. I don't think anything will change that. Too much would have to change through all of the doctrine of the church for that to change. However, we're grateful for continuing efforts of those who work to ensure the Respect for Marriage Act includes religious freedom while respecting the law and rights of our LGBT. Marriage is not a right. If it was a right, you could walk up to anyone and demand to be married. You could demand that the government give you a spouse. Marriage is not a right. It is a privilege. You have the right to be married, yes, but you do not have the right to demand it. You have the right to all sorts of relationships. You have the privilege of entering into any relationship, but you cannot demand the right. I do not agree with that statement. I don't, because I do not believe that marriage is a right. Marriage is a privilege. You cannot force marriage upon someone. The state cannot walk up and say, you will marry this person because they're unmarried. You will get married because you are not married. The state cannot enforce a right in that manner. It is a privilege. rights are protected by the government. That's like the trans community says they have the right to serve in the military. No. Military service is a privilege. There are all sorts of people who are not privileged to serve. Working together to preserve the principles and practices of religious freedom. They do not want us to have religious freedom. They want us to be irreligious. Going on with President Oaks. Why do they think now they need to clear up for members? Why weren't the members considered first? While the Respect for Marriage Act codified same-sex marriage in federal law, the act also provided needed protections for religious expression. Putting such protections into federal law was a big step forward. I don't know what protections they put into the law. I don't. They reaffirmed several previously standing laws like Obergefell and others, but those are challengeable. And if you don't think they're challengeable, ask a cake baker in Colorado. He'll tell you they challenge all sorts of stuff they don't like. And then you'll spend thousands of dollars and years to defend yourself. The focus of the church's efforts in support of the Respect for Marriage Act was not on same-sex marriage, but ensuring the act contained the necessary protections for religious freedom, he said, adding that the time that the act was adopted, that the church publicly reaffirmed our doctrine approving only marriage between... Yes, that was the opening statement. Previously, bills made no attempt to perfect them. Okay. The amended bill was signed into law, but its overall effect was misunderstood because many news stories focused only on the part of the act that affirmed same-sex marriage, like the church's statement. Paragraph 1, between man and law. But we're going to protect religious freedoms while respecting your rights. If it's a right, they can demand it. Can't they? President Oaks said the Respect for Marriage Act is signed into law. 1. Includes many valuable provisions to assure that no federal or state laws could be used to harm the religious or conscious rights of faith-based institutions or their members, or make the bigot kneel and bake a cake. They still try. That man's losing his business because of multiple lawsuits and one trip to the Supreme Court, and they still didn't agree, and they still take him to court, even though he won on the Supreme Court level. They keep coming. Ensures that religious organizations, schools, and staff do not have to perform or host same-sex marriages or celebrations. Yes. And Hobby Lobby, and what was it? Little Sisters didn't have to provide abortions and other things as part of their health care service. And yet, Obama backed those measures. What was the Little Sisters one? Because the nuns, the charitable nuns, the Catholic Health Services, you will provide abortions. Right of conscience. No, not under this administration. So yet, I don't see that. Protects the tax-exempt status of religious organizations. Yeah, okay, your tax-exempt status is protected, even while they sue you for thousands or millions. Protects the grants, licenses, contracts, and accreditations for religious schools, while they infiltrate your school with LGBTQ identity issues and undermine it from within. So yeah, why attack it when you can just come in and subvert it? Provides that its own provisions cannot be used to violate anyone's rights to religious freedom. That the provisions of the law cannot violate anyone's right to religious freedom. No, they'll just go outside the right of that one particular law to try and subvert religious freedom. Looking forward, President Oaks said church leaders will be alert to proposed future state action and legislation as we continue our defense of religious freedom. The clarification for the church's support for Respect for Marriage Act came 15 months after President Oaks called for a peaceful resolution to the painful conflicts between religious freedom and non-discrimination. We do need that. There does need to be an end to the conflict. From my point of view, though, we're not the bigots. Let us unite with those who advocate non-discrimination to seek a culture and laws that respect the rights of all to the equal protection of the law and the right to the free exercise of religion. I have a problem with the word non-discrimination. Not as it stands now, but as how it would stand in, 2 to 5 years. White supremacy meant something 5 years ago that it does not mean now. Racism meant something 4 or 5 years ago that it does not mean now. Anti-racism is not the same thing as it was 4 or 5 years ago. That's the tactic of the left. They changed the definition so that old terms that you once supported are no longer held that way. And if you're not up on the current lingo, you're busted and lose. Let us unite with those who advocate non-discrimination, seek a culture. We read that. In doing so, he added then that Latter-day Saints must not allow fears about losing religious freedoms make them insensitive to other claims for freedom. I don't know. See, this is what boggles me. We are a traditional church. We are a conservative church. And by conservative, I don't mean we don't vote as a bloc in any one particular way. Yeah, we're in America, we're highly Republican. But we're conservative because we have faith in the institutions and the wisdom of the past. That wisdom of the past is under attack. There's a reason that the family has been described and set up as it has been for hundreds of years. For the advance of culture and civilization. And yes, there are some out there that oppose same-sex unions on bigoted grounds. I don't know many Latter-day Saints that were among those. I never had problem with the civil union. I never had problem with making sure that they had equal access to health care and insurance benefits because they are the partner of someone in a same-sex relationship. I had heard of stories of same-sex couples when one's in the hospital dying, that a certain person, their partner cannot visit them because they're not family. Or they're not, because of how they're viewed. And that I disagree with. And also housing discrimination. Those things, yes. But you set up a term other than marriage, and they're going to take the word marriage and they're going to corrupt it like they did the rainbow. Simple as. In that address, President Oak said he is distressed at the way the National is handling divisive issues. But the church is not clear, and you leave us members in the lurch. We've always had to work through serious political conflict, but today too many approach that task as if their preferred outcome is to entirely prevail over all others. And that's the problem. We will give, they will take. When we ask in return, bupkis. That is the problem with this entire issue. Charity goes one way in this issue and in many of these progressive circles. Nothing becomes more conservative or less progressive, tending to just become liberal again. It does not happen. There is no shift on policy to the right in any situation or circumstance. Everything goes increasingly more left. Maybe, I keep talking about how the prophets see in the distance and down corners, like I did in that address from President Packer when he was president of the Quorum of the 12. but I don't see it here. And maybe that's a weakness in my own faith. I put faith that the leaders know what they're doing. But they're very willing to put out statements that the world will find acceptable and worthwhile. And they leave the membership to scratch their heads and go, well, follow the prophet. And follow the prophet is limited advice at best. Elder Oaks has been one of my favorite speakers. He and Elder Packer. I would sit on the edge of my seat waiting for them to speak at conferences from the time I was on a mission and on. And I'm still enamored with the things President Oaks talks about and his subject matter and the way he sees things. And I know he's got a brilliant legal mind, but I wonder if he understands, and I hate even asking this, I wonder if he understands progressivism. The goal of the progressive is to make the personal political and make the political personal. In the quest for power, everything must be made political. Everything must be made political, so that it can be subverted and twisted and bent to the will of the mob. And then mob rule runs. And any who stand with a viewpoint or a belief contrary to that which is acceptable, they're run over. You're bullied and labeled and pushed to the fringe. Think about it. We need more female representation. Wait, not that chick in Italy. She's far right because she advocates for family values, an end to consumerism, and a return to church and family and small business and people succeeding. That bigot. How dare that 16-year-old boy in Canada say that biological males should not be in a female's bathroom, notwithstanding the fact that those females in that school don't feel safe. And when they go to the school says, bend the knee, bigot, so they go to the boy who's on their board, and he stands up and has a strong approach. Legally. He advocates. He protests. And when they don't like it, they suspend him indefinitely so that he cannot return to the school and his voice cannot be heard. They arrest him when he protests. They arrest him when he shows up to go back to school. Justin Trudeau. I wish we did things a little bit more like they did in China. I respect free speech, Trudeau says, and then makes it illegal to be a trucker in Canada because they come to Ottawa and raise a ruckus. Make your voice heard. Stand strong. Labor. Support yourselves. But not in my territory. The Netherlands, Dutch farmers, we're going to shut you down. Dutch farmers show up. A couple instances, the cops take shots at tractors just driving by. They've done nothing wrong. The police pull their sidearms and shoot. The police are under no distress. They make it illegal to protest. All because of the stated reason was too much of nitrogen? Maybe, I think I'm probably wrong. Runoff affects Germany and the mosquito population. Real reason? Pave over the farmland, the productive farmland, and build homes for migrants. Look at the urbanization of London, England. The rest of England. Mega City 1, all of England, giant city. Do away with the hedgerows and the traditional greenery. End British pubs. I'm getting off topic because this is marriage, but you get the idea. You get the idea, and you have to see it coming. You have to see that the technological oligarchs are coming for you. And they're using the cudgel of the left to do it. There's a reason that the minority LGBTQ population has such great support from the corporate institution and governments. And these are being done against our will. Look at the books and bathroom policies taking place in your schools. Elder Oaks at the Notre Dame Religious Liberty Summit said religious leaders should unite and find common ground to defend and promote religious liberty. Yes, they should. This is not a call for doctrinal compromise, thank you, but rather a plea for unity and cooperation on strategy and advocacy. Let's go down to his actual address, shall we? This is his statement. Some of our members have expressed concerns that the new National Respect for Marriage law is in conflict with the Church's teachings against same-sex marriage. We see a need to clarify the Church's position on that new law. At the time the National Respect for Marriage Act was adopted, the Church publicly reaffirmed our church doctrine approving only marriage between one man and one woman. Yeah, we read that. Marriage bills previously proposed in Congress made no attempt to protect religious freedom. The Church came out in favor of amendments that added religious freedom protections to the proposed Respect for Marriage Act. The amended bill was signed into law, but its overall effect was misunderstood because many stories focused only on the part of the act that affirms same-sex marriage. But the problem is, I can't find articles that talk about what it does for religious freedom. I'm going to bring that one of those up, too. The Respect for Marriage Act did restate same-sex marriage, but added the little because it was already the law in effect under the U.S. Supreme Court's Obergefell decision. The focus of the church efforts was not on same-sex marriage, but on ensuring the contained and necessary protection for religious freedom. As signed into law, the Respect for Marriage Act included valuable provisions that ensure that no federal or state laws could be used to harm the religious or conscious rights of faith-based institutions or their members. In the end, the total law that ensures religious organizations, schools, and staff do not have to perform or host same-sex marriages or celebrations. Do not have to. What happens if they volunteer? Does that set a precedent? It protects grants, licenses, contracts, and accreditation of religious schools, and it specifically provides that its own provisions cannot be used to violate anyone's rights to religious freedom. Putting such protections in the federal law was a big step forward. We will be alerted to proposed future state action and legislation as we continue our defense of religious freedom. And then why support when they've spoken out. And yes, they speak out a lot on religious freedom because it is under assault. Make no mistake. Now, the Alliance Defending Freedom. This is, from my understanding, a law group, a law think tank, and they review things going on. They are conservative. But what you should know about the Respect for Marriage Act. The misnamed Respect for Marriage Act undermines the marriage and threatens religious freedom and free speech. Note here, President Biden signed into law December 13th. And here's what the Alliance Defending Freedom said. And again, this is a law organization, not LDS, law. This is a law-based organization. As soon as the U.S. Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade, activists went to work mischaracterizing the ruling, and they did. Many disingenuously used Dobbs v. Jackson's Women's Health Organization decision, and particularly Justice Clarence Thomas's concurrence, to stoke fears that the court might overturn other precedents, including Obergefell v. Hodges, in which the court invented a constitutional right to same-sex marriage. And the court did invent a right to marriage, and that's the right that the church affirms in their statement. Using this feigned outrage as a cover, these activists pushed for a federal law called the Respect for Marriage Act. The bill is unnecessary and could have a disastrous effect on religious freedom and free speech. The Respect for Marriage Act was introduced in July and quickly sailed through the House of Representatives without any public hearings or committee meetings. That I did not know. There was no discussion or debate. Okay. Enabling its proponents to mischaracterize the bill as a simple codification of Obergefell. After outcry from thousands of religious Americans, this guy, faith-based organizations, and churches, a small group of senators offered a substitute version that they claim fixes the bill's religious liberty problems. Let's be clear. The religious freedom protections in this new version of the Respect for Marriage Act are nothing more than window dressing and do little to substantively protect religious freedom. That's my problem because that's my understanding and take. The misnamed Respect for Marriage Act codifies in federal law an incorrect understanding of marriage. Yes. And it enables litigation against those who disagree. See, this is where Elder Oak says it will prevent litigation, and these guys say it will, and I have to agree with them. While proponents of the bill claim that it merely enshrines the 2015 Obergefell decision, in reality it is a direct attack on the religious freedom of millions of Americans with sincerely held beliefs about marriage. The Respect for Marriage Act threatens religious freedom and the institution of marriage in multiple ways. And here are my main points, and I agree with them. It further embeds a false definition of marriage in the American legal fabric, and it does. And now you're looking, God forbid, you're looking at the MAP population grow. And if you don't know MAP, it's not the kind you use for orienteering and getting your way around the mountains. MAP is minor attracted persons, and a push for consensual sex to be allowed because children can consent. They cannot. But you see, they change definitions. They want to change consent. It jeopardizes the tax-exempt status of nonprofits that exercise their belief that marriage is the union of one man and one woman. See, Elder Oak says this protects it, and they can't face litigation, but they can. They can bring all the litigation they want. The litigation may fail, but you're spending precious treasure and resource to defend yourself. It could make religious freedom and free speech cases harder to win, and it will. Look at the Democrat in the House of Representatives, I forget their name, that wants to push hate speech laws, including saying that marriage is between a man and a woman, because that would offend the LGBTQ community and the other things that you can't say. And that's always the problem, right? Who gets to decide what is hate speech and what isn't? Who gets to decide what is kosher speech and what isn't? It could result in predatory litigation, which I mentioned earlier, by activists against faith-based social service organizations that could mire Americans in courts for years to vindicate their rights under the First Amendment, speech and religion, assembly, press. And I point back at the guy who makes the cakes in Colorado. I can't remember his name offhand, but you know who it is. He'll make you the cake and he'll frost it, but he won't put a certain message on it. He'll make the cake and you can take it to somewhere else to put the message on. Or he'll give you alternatives where they'll make the cake. And they're like, no, bend the knee, bigot, make the cake for me. Because it's about power. Their personal life and what they do in the bedroom becomes political because someone disagrees with them. The political is personal, the personal is political, and it's applied for power. That's praxis, that's activism. This is the danger of what they're teaching in fractional amounts at BYU, but it's ever wider in the more secular colleges. My wife hates the fact that I'm not letting my kid go to college. And she thinks that's all I'm saying. No, my kid can go to college for a medical degree, a law degree, but if she just wants to manage a small business, I'll say, work for your mom and her soap making business. Work for me and my self-defense business. Work for this person that runs the bakery here in town. You get the idea? Apprentice, mentor, and start your own business. You don't need college for that. You don't need college to fix automobiles. You don't need college to be a plumber. You don't need college to be a roofer or a framer or any of these things. But we push our kids into college that are pushing these predatory, anti-Christian, anti-Christ ideologies. And you send your beautiful daughter away, and she comes home with tats, piercings, and short hair, and says her name is Bob. You send your son away, and he comes back wearing a prom dress and a tiara and a full beard, and says, "Call me Jenny." And when Grandma says no, they get out on Twitter, and they raise hell, and Facebook shuts them down. Shuts down the parents and grandparents. You can't rent Airbnb because you were a bigot towards your granddaughter that was born with the name John. Look, nothing's changed since Obergefell for religious freedom. That's what this says here, and this is what I see. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a judge. I hope I'm wrong. But you look at the way it's going in terms of our culture and what we're doing and where our heads are at. And I don't see a way for this to last. I don't. It's a mess. So then they go on, has it passed Congress? What does it do? And then they go more into, this might be something I get into later, is the freedom of conscience. There are no real protections for religious individuals or organizations. There haven't been for a while. Those have been under fire since Clinton. Obama was the big one with the Little Sisters of Charity or Little Sisters of the Poor, with Catholic Health Services that my dad worked for a time. For Hobby Lobby. I've got this wonderful set of books that I'm reading here. I'm not reading this. Oops, that's not the one. That's the American Revolution. Where did I put them? Okay, they must be downstairs. But I've got a book's Debates on the Constitution. And there were states that held out that wanted a Bill of Rights. But most importantly, they wanted this, the freedom of conscience. We hold tight. The atheists love to point and go, separation of church and state, separation of church, without really knowing what separation of church and state means. It means no national law, or no national religion. No state religion. Like, you don't have to be a Mormon to be in Utah. You can be Presbyterian. You can be Hindu. You can be Muslim. You can be atheist. But you can't establish the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints as the official church of Utah and then limit people to being members of that church in order to hold office, or to be Catholic in Massachusetts, or to, you get the idea. What happens when you click on freedom of conscience? Does it redirect you? Conscience is our God-given ability to discern right from wrong, good from evil, but it's more than that. For knowing right from wrong wouldn't do much good if we didn't or couldn't act on it. So conscience also includes the ability to apply laws, rules, and intuitions in the right way. In other words, to act on what we believe. James Madison called conscience the most sacred of all property. Thomas Jefferson said that no provision in our Constitution ought to be dearer to man than that which protects the rights of conscience against the government. And that's part of why these weaponization of the government hearings in Congress are important. Because government couldn't come at you to shut down speech in words they didn't like. Instead, they worked with corporations to shut you down. You don't like the jab? Well, the government can't stop you, but maybe the FBI will approach Twitter and Facebook. You don't like President Trump, but President Biden seems really bad? What's this, a laptop that will further incriminate Biden and turn people away from him? Hey, Twitter. Hey, Facebook. This is Russian propaganda. Trust us. I love this church. I love this country, and we're being torn apart culturally over these divisions. But we're being torn apart because there is no and can be no compromise with the left. And I say that not because I don't want to compromise. We compromise all the time. But the left will not compromise. They'll shake your hand and then drag you a step further. And then they'll shake your hand and drag you a step further. And then when you put up resistance, they'll call you a bigot and a bully and get others to push on you. And they will exercise the power of government if they're given the proper power. I love this country. I love this church. I love my fellow Americans, and I love everyone I've met from around the world. And I've been to a whole lot of places. And people generally understand that culture was America's greatest export. But lately, the culture that we're exporting and the critical theories is poison to the people around the world. There's a reason there's a Chinese version of TikTok where they limit the amount of time that the Chinese kids can be on it and the type of programming they find on it, the content, versus what the American kids see. There's a reason that the Russian and Chinese and other militaries are pushing commercials about being a man, joining the military, defend your country, be strong. And America's churning out, I want to defend the rights of my two mommies when they... And they've got military members wearing the dog fetish mask in their... We're a weak and degenerate people. We're becoming a weak and degenerate people. We've forgotten that rough men make it through hard times. That as the times get easier, the men get weaker. And when men are at their weakest, the times become hard again. And I worry about these kids we're turning out. Because we helicopter parent and we give in and we don't fight back and we don't teach value. Brothers and sisters, I love you. I want to know what you think. Where am I wrong? Where am I wrong? Please, somebody tell me where I'm wrong. I'm begging you, tell me where I'm wrong. Tell me that what I'm seeing is wrong. Somebody get Elder Oaks on here and have him tell me, no, you don't understand. This is what we see. Or no, hey, have some faith in this because I'm not asking for a sign. I'm not asking for a sign. But I'm asking for something more than we need healing. Because the left doesn't want to heal. The left wants to tear down and destroy and rebuild in their own image. They want Babylon. Thank you. Leave a comment. Share these if you think it's important. Peace out. Have a good night.